This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
Charlie SIGMIN lived in Blytheville, Arkansas. He was a kind man with strong religious beliefs. But Charlie was a man unlucky in love. Married and divorced twice, he despaired of finding the right woman until he met Ann. This time, Charlie thought he had finally found happiness. He was wrong. During the early morning of October 20th, 1986, Charlie SIGMIN was shot 7 times.
Charlie was laying face down on the carpet, quite a bit of blood up under him. His clothes were in a disarray, as he'd been in a fight. He was soaking wet with sweat, and of course he was bloody.
Ann was separated from Charlie. He was killed in the home of her new boyfriend, Gary Goff. Ann admitted at the time that Charlie had been shot by her boyfriend. But the police are divided about the circumstances of Charlie SIGMIN's death. Was it self-defense or was it murder? Tonight we'll examine this case and 2 other mysteries. In one, a loving, reliable family man walked away from his home and simply disappeared. Police fear he may have amnesia. The other involves the odd memory lapses called missing time, experienced by over 200 Americans. Incredibly, they claim they were abducted by UFO aliens. Now, it sounds outrageous, but many are credible citizens and their claims cannot be easily dismissed. Join me. You may be able to help solve a mystery. Charlie SIGMIN loved children, and when he fell in love with Ann, he also fell in love with her 2 boys. He wanted the best for his new family, and shortly after his marriage, Charlie sold his small house and moved Ann and her children to a 9-acre truck farm. Charlie named the farm after his and Ann's initials, CNAs, a name that he felt symbolized his happy marriage.
They worked side by side. And I know there's got to have been some love there somewhere. Those 2 children is what drew he and Ann together, and they were so crazy about Charlie, and he was those children. After all of these things that have happened, and I can look back now, I can see that she was feathering her nest, she thought.
It's strange. It's something I've never been able to put my finger on, but she just didn't seem Charlie's type, ever. From day one, from the day I met her. I mean, he was crazy about her, and I wouldn't have said anything against her, but she just never seemed his type.
During the summer of 1986, Charlie began to suspect that Ann was seeing another man.
He'd had suspicions about her being involved with somebody else, and he said that he had been watching her. She had disappeared one night, had come back, and then he woke up another night and she was gone, and he thought she had taken off again. Well, he got up and put his clothes on, and she wasn't in the house. He saw a light under the door of their refrigerator, little shed they kept their vegetables and stuff in. He went out and opened the door, and she was sitting in the floor in a negligee, the way he described to me, about half naked. She had a semicircle of candles around her, had a a poster or a drawing or something of a Satan-like figure on the wall was chanting, which he didn't understand. And they had a confrontation. They went into the house, and he didn't go any further than that. I didn't ask.
And he said, I'm not going to tell you, Mother, how she was dressed, and I'm not going to tell you all I saw. But he said, she does not worship God.
3 weeks earlier, Charlie had found this doll in their bedroom and said that Ann had told him it was used in her witchcraft rituals.
And he said, Mother, you don't realize what that is, do you? And I said, well, what is it? He said, that is a doll that they use in their worship. He said, look at that needle in through the heart that's drawn on that. And he said, when I woke up, when I found that, he said it was laying on my pillow.
Disturbed by Ann's behavior, Charlie demanded that she move out. She went to nearby Caruthersville, Missouri, to live with Gary Goff, a truck driver who had once been a policeman. Ironically, Charlie had known Gary since childhood. But most upsetting to Charlie was that Ann had taken her 2 children with her. These events took their toll on Charlie. He became depressed. He missed his wife and her 2 boys. He still talked to Ann occasionally, and according to some friends, had then received threatening calls from Gary. On the night of October 19th, 1986, Charlie was with an old friend at home when he received a phone call from Ann. Fearing publicity, Charlie's friend prefers to remain anonymous.
She said that the 2 boys was crying after him. She was threatening suicide. Yeah. And he said that he had to go up there and see what was happening. He said, I could be getting set up here.
Charlie reluctantly agreed to drive to Ann's. According to his friend, Charlie was quite sober. He thought of taking a pistol along, but reconsidered.
No.
3:20 a.m. that same night.
Charlie's been shot. Charlie's been shot.
Ann SIGMIN reported the shooting of her husband at Gary Goff's house. The Caruthersville Police Department conducted a crime scene investigation.
The house was tore apart. It was been a very bad struggle in there. There's blood all over the door and the walls, and a couple of bullet holes in the walls, and one in the door I mentioned. And there were 7 bullet wounds in the body. There were 2 bullet holes on the inside of his left thigh, 1 bullet hole in the upper left scrotum, 1 in the right jaw, 1 of his outside right fist, 1 in the right ear, and 1 in the front of the neck here. This is one that was fatal, according to the autopsy report.
Two guns were found. A .32 revolver was lying on the floor, and a .25 caliber pistol was on top of the TV. Both had been fired. In addition, a bloody iron had been placed in a wastebasket in the kitchen.
She was yelling for help. I got in there. Charlie was beating her.
Gary and Ann were interrogated at length. Gary Goff said he struggled with Charlie, hitting him with the iron and firing all 7 of the shots. Ann corroborated Gary's testimony, but did admit to handling the .25 caliber pistol.
Did you give it to Gary, or did Gary take it from you?
I gave it to Gary.
Ann claimed that Charlie had arrived at the house in a drunken rage, demanding to be let inside.
Come on, we gotta talk.
He then forced his way into the house. Ann maintained that once inside, Charlie began beating her severely until Gary Goff came to her rescue. Though Gary had a broken arm from an earlier incident, he fought with Charlie, then shot him 5 times. He fired 2 more shots with a .25 caliber pistol. Finally, Charlie collapsed. Unfortunately, no blood test was taken to prove if Charlie had been drinking. But even if Ann's story was true, there still might be grounds for a charge of premeditated murder if Ann and Gary had both fired at Charlie. Police conducted a powder residue test to see if Ann had fired a gun. It was inconclusive.
Took it all to the prosecutor's office, told him what was in them. He asked what I felt, and at that time I told him I felt like it was probably self-defense, that I believed that they were telling the truth, and the only thing I could tell him was I had to do more investigation and see.
The Caruthersville Police Department released Ann and Gary. However, the investigation continued. One of Ann's friends claimed that Ann had told her she had reasons for wanting Charlie dead. The sheriff's department wired Ann's friend for sound and waited for Ann to say something that would be an admission of guilt.
We were fast reaching ropes end at being able to charge anybody with this crime. So we had to do something different than what we were doing.
That much time. Fine. I will wait until tomorrow, and then I'll call.
She had, in talking with Miss SIGMIN, had told her she was fixing to go to the police. Miss SIGMIN ultimately told her not to go to the police, or asked her not to go to the police, and give her time to, her and Mr. Goff time to leave town. She incriminated herself on the tape.
After this recorded conversation, the authorities began to prepare a warrant for Ann and Gary's arrest. But only a few hours later, Ann SIGMIN vanished, leaving her two boys behind. Gary Goff had already left town, and his truck was later found abandoned in Phoenix, Arizona. The couple has not been seen since. The police are still divided on whether the shooting of Charlie SIGMIN was self-defense or murder.
In my mind, I do not see a murder first degree here. And I say that because of the scene, the disarray of the house, the damage that was done to it, the angle of the bullet wounds to the body, the fight that occurred, and the damage to Garrett, the bruises on his chest and face, and the bruises on his back, and of course the man had a broken arm.
In my opinion, there's no probability of self-defense. Self-defense just don't exist in this case, and once we get into the trial part of this case where we can bring all the information out, I don't think that anybody else will assume that either.
I think their biggest mistake is being gone. I would like to see him come back and resolve this thing, because I do not believe that Gary Goff is capable of murder first degree, and I've got questions about it.
The only way the case will be resolved is when Ann and Gary have their day in court. They have never been officially served with a warrant and may not even be aware that they are wanted. Next, the shocking story of two happy-go-lucky teenage boys who died in a bizarre train accident. Their parents believe they were murdered. Last month, we told you about two teenage boys in Arkansas who apparently died in a bizarre train accident. Recent developments have left no doubt that, in fact, the boys were murdered and that they may have been killed by drug dealers. Shortly after midnight, on August 23, 1987, Don Henry and Kevin Ives set out night hunting near the railroad tracks behind Don's home. 4 hours later, a cargo train traveling at 52 miles per hour hurtled down on their motionless bodies.
I started laying down on the diesel horn, and I got no reaction, none at all, not so much as a flinch.
The two boys were lying parallel on the tracks. They were partially covered by a light green tarp. Beside them lay Don's .22 caliber rifle. The state medical examiner initially ruled that their deaths were an accident. Months later, Prosecutor Richard Garrett instigated a second autopsy. This time the results revealed that Kevin Ives had been stabbed in the back by a large knife and Don Henry had been hit in the face with a rifle butt. Officials now believe that both boys were either unconscious or dead before the train hit them. Since the broadcast, several anonymous callers to our 800 number have alleged that Kevin and Don's death is related to drug trafficking in the area. We have asked Prosecutor Richard Garrett to join us to update the investigation. Richard, how could the killings be related to drug trafficking?
Saline County and the central Arkansas area is overrun at this time with drug trafficking. And it's drug trafficking on a high level that extends into other states and into other counties.
What do you believe happened the night they died?
I think that the boys saw something that they shouldn't have seen. And it had to do with drugs, either with a crank lab, which manufactures methamphetamine, or certain individuals involved in those matters, and those people felt like that the information that the boys then had was such that they could not allow them to live.
Could anyone else be involved?
I think there is a distinct possibility that there are other parties involved. The thing is, the case is so complex that the solution could lie to something as simple as a vagrant or a migrant on the railroad track doing it and going away and us never hearing anything from it again. Or it could be as complicated as police involvement.
I remember in the segment the parents were very frustrated with the fact that they couldn't get any information. Do you think there's a cover-up?
There certainly was a cover-up at first, whether inadvertent or through lack of attention or through just plain stubbornness when this thing first got started. The parents hollered for 6 months for someone to help them and for someone to find out what happened to the boys, and no one would help.
And how has this case affected you personally?
I go to bed at night thinking about it, and I wake up in the morning thinking about it. It's all that's been on my mind. The majority of my time during the week is devoted to it. And you get involved in it and you can't quit.
Thank you, Richard, for being with us, and hope we helped you in the case. In a moment, the story of an Air Force sergeant who experienced a bizarre phenomenon called missing time. In 1966, he vanished for the period of 1 hour. He said he had no idea what happened until placed under hypnosis 20 years later. Imagine for a moment that you go to the corner store for a quick errand. When you return home, thinking you've been gone no more than 5 minutes, you find that in reality 3 hours have passed. And what is more, you have no memory of it at all. We're about to meet several people who have dealt with a deeply disturbing experience of missing time. Their stories are both bizarre and chilling. Our first glimpse into the extraordinary phenomenon of missing time begins simply enough. At 8:45 p.m. on October the 1st, 1966, a bus pulled up in front of Dutra's Market in the small Cape Cod village of North Truro. Only one man got off the bus. He was 19-year-old Airman First Class Robert Matthews, reporting for his first tour of duty at a nearby Air Force outpost. He noticed that the area was deserted. Matthews was from Philadelphia. Although he didn't know it, his assignment in Cape Cod would be a prelude to service in Vietnam.
I got off where the bus driver told me where I was supposed to get off, and he told me to phone the base and they would send a truck down to pick me up.
Yes, I'll be waiting. Thank you, sir.
I told him that I was in front of Dutra's Market, and he told me to stay there and that there would be a truck there to pick me up in a minute. While I was standing there, I saw these lights, moving from right to left across the sky. That's when I felt this fear, and I said, I better call the base.
Hello, this is Airman Matthews? Yes, sir. Yes, I've been here all the time. No, I haven't gone anywhere. Please tell him to hurry. There's something strange going on.
When I called the base again, they asked me where I'd been, and I told them I'd been there in front of Dutra's, you know, waiting, you know, and he told me, he says, well, we sent a truck down there already. And I says, well, I've been standing here waiting, and no one's been by here.
Matthew! Matthew!
The Air Force told Bob Matthews that a driver had arrived to pick him up at 8:50 p.m., just 5 minutes after his first phone call. The driver claimed that Matthews was nowhere in sight. Nearly 1 hour later, at 9:45, the Air Force Post received Matthews' second phone call. Yet, in Bob Matthews' mind, those two phone calls had been made less than 4 minutes apart.
I want to know where you were for that 1 hour.
In front of the market.
We sent a Jeep out there. The officer came back and you weren't there.
When Matthews arrived at the post, he was questioned extensively by Air Force personnel wearing civilian clothes.
They began to interrogate me about where I'd been the past hour. I stick to my story, you know. I tell them that I was in front of Dutra's the whole time.
Mathers, you claim you saw 3 lights coming down from the sky at you. Is that correct? They were coming from the sky down toward you.
They kept asking me, well, what kind of aircraft did you see, and what did it do? And this went on for a long time. And I thought it was still part of basic training or something. I thought this is what they do to new guys.
Let me ask you, Mathers, had you been drinking before you got on the bus? Had you been drinking while you were on leave?
No.
We have this in many cases where the person is literally gone but has been consciously unaware of being missing. It's a kind of a mini period of amnesia. This is what the missing time phenomenon really is. It is not perceived as a break in which something happens and then a resumption. It is, time is remembered as continuous, and yet the half-hour trip turns out to be a 2-hour trip or whatever. And this is sometimes experienced in conjunction with a UFO sighting or something like a light, but not always.
In 1964, Hopkins, a well-known artist, experienced a UFO sighting along with several friends. He delved into the field and became a UFO expert.
I began getting phone calls from people and letters, and many of their sighting reports had pieces of missing time in them. They could not account for why something that should have taken 15 minutes took 2 hours and a half. A drive in a car, which involved a sighting of a UFO. And we began looking into those cases and discovered one after another of these abduction cases. And eventually, together with a psychologist who was helping me with this and other investigators, we put together many cases, and I finally wrote a book about it.
Over the past 10 years, Hopkins has written 2 books dealing with the phenomenon of missing time and abduction by aliens. He has received thousands of letters from people who believe they have experienced a missing time abduction. He has personally investigated more than 200 of them.
What was shocking to me was that it turned out to seem so incredibly common. This is extraordinarily widespread.
At the time Hopkins' books came out, Bob Matthews was wrestling with a secret that had haunted him for 30 years. A secret that had tormented him long before his experience at Dutra's Market on Cape Cod.
When I was a child, maybe 5 or 6, I just happened to wake up one night, and I looked to my right in my bedroom, and there was this figure standing there, a small figure with a green glow to it. And I sat up in bed, and I tried to scream, and nothing came out of my mouth, and I thought I had lost my hearing. I thought I had lost my voice. I didn't know what was going on. The next thing I knew, everything was black again, and I was laying back down in the bed. And this thing, this ghost, I thought at the time when I was a kid, I called it a ghost, came over and sat down on my bed and pulled up my pajama top. And I don't know what it did to my chest, but I knew it was doing something to my chest at the time, you know. I told my mother that there was a ghost in my room. She kept reassuring me that I was only having nightmares. But I went through all my life doubting my sanity, wondering whether or not these things have occurred.
Bob Matthews began to resolve his doubts in the winter of 1987.
I was on vacation looking for something to read, and on the shelf there in front of me, I saw this book with this creature on it, you know? And when I looked at the book, I said to myself, that's a thing that was in my room. I read the book, and I thought someone had stepped into my head and taken my innermost fears and put them in a book. It brought tears to my eyes, you know. I couldn't believe this was actually happening to someone else.
When Bob called me, it had that familiar ring of truth to me, as did the details of his case. He was quite convinced that this was not a dream. He sounded troubled, curious, very, very stable.
After weeks of intensive interviews, Bud Hopkins put Bob Matthews under hypnosis to explore the details of Bob's childhood experiences. While he was hypnotized, Bob also began to recall what had happened to him that night outside Dutra's market.
This evening, October 1st, 1966. Now, very relaxed, Bob. I want you to feel the movement of that bus. You can feel that bus rolling along and the sound.
Hypnosis is often very useful. Even the AMA's report on hypnosis has said that it's a very proper method of retrieving lost memories. So I connected myself with a psychiatrist and a couple of psychologists who were doing the hypnosis, and we began looking into a number of cases.
Something was really, really wrong, because all of a sudden I got very afraid.
Bob Matthews' case is really typical and very good missing time case, because the fact that there is an indirect witness to his having been missing during a missing time period is very important.
Well, I'm going to call the base. I'm going to call the base and tell them, you know, that there's something strange happening here.
Bob's recollections were so vivid that he was able to return to Cape Cod and reconstruct what he believes took place outside Dutra's market.
Under hypnosis, I observed in the sky 2, 3 lights moving in this direction. They hovered over here, and the red one came at me so fast. It just got there so quick. If I had blinked my eye, I don't think I would have seen it, but it got there so quick, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it just momentarily hovers right on the parking lot there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see some light come from a crack. It's like a ramp opens down, and I can see a lot of light come out of there. Right over here is about where the ramp was, right here. Part of it was still out in the road. I walked up to it, walked up the ramp, and I looked inside, and I saw 4 beings sitting over here on the left. There was 2 sitting on the right. And the place reminded me of a doctor's office. I mean, it was clinical. It looked clean. I remember sitting down on the table, sitting down on the bench, and I remember looking down, and I saw that my shoes were off and my shirt was off. And they came over, they examined my chest. He looks at my chest, and the 2 of them, it's like they have a discussion with each other, and it's like...
Every single case, we came out with a scenario which was exactly like the other scenarios. They're taken into a craft, a landed UFO, put on a table, clothes are removed. They seem to have no will or no ability to resist. They are then physically examined. The descriptions of the procedures, what follows what kinds of things happened are extremely similar. Samples are taken during that time, sometimes blood samples, but often skin scrapings, and very often sperm and ova samples. The descriptions that we're getting of the UFO occupants, about 85% are extremely similar. The figures are little, between 3.5 and 5 feet tall, extremely slender. They have a grayish white skin. They have very large craniums. The eyes are often very, very black. The mouth is a slit, which never seems to move, and there are no ears. I'm the first one to admit how outrageous all of this is. The people to whom it happens also say, this just can't happen.
Sometimes I even think it's harder for people like us to believe it than the outside, people that it hasn't happened to.
I'm as much a skeptic as anybody else. I mean, I wasn't born believing that UFOs existed. Of course, I mean, I get up in the morning and say, no, that can't be. Just, it's ridiculous.
I can't use those words, abducted by aliens. I just don't know what it was. I know that some people came and did some things to me, but where did they come from? I don't know.
I've worked with intensively with about 11 abductees, and I would say, to my mind, 7 of them seem to be valid in terms of the material that they present.
Nobody's ever been through this would ever wish it.
Bud Hopkins has organized support groups so that people who believe they are victims of missing time and alien abduction can compare their disturbing experiences.
The big question is, why me?
Yeah.
I think we all ask.
I was utterly skeptical. I thought it was complete hogwash, hocus pocus, abducted by aliens, except for the fact that there were these patients of mine who I knew to be very trustworthy, very honest, very uncrazy people. Just your garden variety, Boston area folks. And they were reporting strange things.
How many experiences does each of you remember having or think you've had?
I would say at least 10. I mean, 10 that I know of. And Bud and I have done hypnosis on about 6 of them.
KRISTINA Florence is a New York choreographer who feels she has had multiple experiences of missing time and alien abduction.
And I mean, I've had...
There's no question that these stories stretch the imagination. Perhaps, as the skeptics suggest, they could be the product of some kind of mass hallucination. But the people we interviewed sincerely believe what happened is real. When we return, we'll hear KRISTINA Florence's story. Incredibly, her experiences and others like hers suggest that some sort of genetic experimentation is being conducted on the victims of missing time. The Mojave Desert, 1974. KRISTINA Florence was 17 years old when she, her mother, and her older sister crossed the Mojave en route to San Francisco. Near Barstow, California, their car overheated, and they took the first exit off the highway.
You girls stay in the car. Roll up the windows and lock the door. Yes, please.
Somewhere along the line, we got to this park.
We're gonna suffocate.
Mom, don't you think we're old enough to handle this on our own?
We're having a problem with this engine. I have to go get some water.
At that point, she just walked away. Where was she going? I don't know. But she said stay in the car.
You're not supposed to go outside. You said stay in the car.
Well, I am doing it.
My sister got out of the car, and I heard her run around the back. And all of a sudden, she said, oh, my God, come out here quick. And the next thing I remembered consciously was that we were lying on this blanket in the middle of the park as if we'd had a little nap, just lying there. Our mom was still not around, and we woke up and was like, whoa, what happened? And then the next thing I remember, the 3 of us are just driving like hell. We never talked about it until my sister just called me up one day, and we sort of began to talk about it further and realized that we'd both had this very bizarre memory of this missing time thing. And she knew about Bud, and she suggested I get in touch with Bud.
So she had to sort of crank up her courage to look into it, and it was reluctant. She was reluctant to do so.
I wasn't interested in UFOs. I wasn't interested in finding out, meeting some guy who, doing UFO research.
In 1986, KRISTINA agreed to undergo hypnosis, hoping she could recall some details about what had happened to her and her sister that afternoon in Barstow.
At some point, your mother pulls off the road. You can feel the car move as it turns off the road, and you can see your mother, and you can see yourself there. You're there with Vicky.
Under hypnosis, I started having this picture that my sister's getting out of the car. And then I get out of the car, and I looked up, and there was something above the car. And I was so scared, I didn't know what it was. I ran back to the car, and she ran back, and she got herself crunched under the dashboard. She was so scared, and I was trying to start the car, and it wouldn't start. I don't know what they're doing. Then the next memory that I had into the hypnosis was that I was on a table, and there were some people around. It's like they're pulling on my leg. There was this screen. It was about as wide as a large television screen, but it was paper thin, and it was just moving around the table, and it wasn't attached to anything. And I could see three-dimensional shapes of my skull and my, my whole body. It was just taking pictures. And it was just this huge spherical room that was just covered with dials. There wasn't space. It was just dials. And I felt like they put like these rubber pants on me or something with things attached. And then they left the room, and I lay there, and I was asking for my sister, and somebody was telling me she's okay, she's all right. And the dials started going, and then they came back in, and that's the last thing I remember. Then we were back on the grass.
Christine Florence, I think, is, without a doubt, absolute, utterly, totally legit. She is a very trustworthy, very honest person who I've talked to several times. And she's angry about what's happened to her. She doesn't like what's happened to her. She's been able to incorporate it into her life and get on with her life despite this.
4 and go and step back. I live a perfectly normal life. I have a dance company. I go to work every day. I have an apartment. I have 2 cats. I have a perfectly normal life. I'm not crazy. There's definitely something going on. And what it is, I don't know. I could be having a dream, and everyone else is having the same dream. But I'm not lying. And I'm not crazy.
If KRISTINA and Bob Matthews and the hundreds of others like them are not lying, if we even admit the possibility that these abductions have occurred, it raises a frightening question. Why are the abductors here?
Ultimately, the focus becomes reproductive, and the interest seems to have to do with taking sperm and ova samples. And the whole central focus of the physical part of it seems to deal with the idea of an ongoing genetic experiment. And these abductees are, let's say, involuntary victims or specimen in this ongoing genetic experiment.
There's an incredibly high incidence of gynecological, physiological history of symptoms that has just not appeared in the rest of the population. Every time I meet one of these people and I say, well, what is your history? There is almost always something like ovarian cancer at a very young age, an ovarian cyst that burst in the ovary was removed, or some kind of strange thing with twisted fallopian tubes, all kinds of weird, bizarre things that have happened that just don't happen. I mean, women have gynecological problems, but not to this degree.
A lot of us have had false pregnancies, miscarriages after 3 months of pregnant, abortions where there actually was nothing, nothing was found. And don't know what that's for or what that's about.
The thought of aliens conducting reproductive experiments seems totally unbelievable. Yet those who have experienced it insist it is real, painfully real.
And I wish the people that ridiculed us could live one day and one night in my body. But I don't want anybody to go through what I live with.
The numbers of cases, the amount of distress, emotional distress, the consistency of the accounts, the physical marks, the weight of the evidence is so powerful now that even if I wished for the luxury of disbelief, it's not possible for me anymore, and that's unfortunate. It would be, in a certain sense, life would be a lot simpler and nicer if this would somehow go away.
It can't make sense, and it doesn't make sense, so we're stuck, really, trying to make sense out of something that doesn't make sense, but that is no reason to dismiss it out of hand.
I would really like to get to the bottom of it someday. I'd really like to know what it's about, because the hard part of it is just not knowing.
If the scientists were doing what they are supposed to be doing, they should be doing this, and it shouldn't be left to people like myself. The existence of an extraordinary phenomenon, as this is, demands an extraordinary investigation. And unfortunately, most of the proper scientific community is sitting on the sidelines, leaving it up to the rest of us to look into. And it's not what should be happening.
Abduction by aliens. It seems outrageous. Yet those who've experienced missing time episodes believe that is exactly what happened to them. Of course, there's no proof either way. Until there is, even the most skeptical among us must admit at least the slim possibility that these unbelievable events might actually have taken place. Rogers Cain had always hoped to build a better life for his 7 children. In 1958, Rogers moved from Mississippi to Los Angeles, and for the first time ever, was able to give his children advantages he never had.
My dad was a caring man. He the type of father that would take his kids to Disneyland, Long Beach, Dodger Stadium, different amusement parks. He always wanted to share time with his kids. I think also his job played a big part. And in order for him to be a good father, he had to fulfill those duties with the job.
Rogers was 62 and worked for the Department of Parks and Recreation. He rarely missed a day on the job. On the afternoon of February 19, 1986, Rogers told his sister that he was going to a local hardware store. His family never saw him again. Rogers Cain is like millions of Americans. His virtues are steadiness and reliability. His praises remain largely unsung. Because stability is a quality we tend to take for granted, a man like Rogers, who is both a solid employee and a steadfast family man, is often not appreciated until he is gone. Several clues have surfaced to suggest that Rogers is still alive. The day after Rogers disappeared, he called a neighbor and told her he didn't feel well and would not be going to work.
So immediately I knew something was wrong. And we proceeded to call the police departments, the hospitals, the nursing homes, all my relatives.
2 days later, a private security company in an affluent neighborhood spotted a man whom they believed to be Rogers Cain. The man appeared confused and gave them a phone number belonging to Rogers' sister, Theresa.
Is there a family member I could call, maybe? Somebody I can get a hold of, come pick you up?
When Theresa arrived to pick up her brother, the man had disappeared. 1 month later, Rogers' car was found parked on a busy street 22 miles from his home. Remarkably, all his papers, his GI Bill, the deed to his property, and his insurance policies, as well as his glasses and false teeth, were in the car.
And there were pieces of paper with my sister's phone number where he was writing it over and over again. And it made me think that he was trying to remember it.
At a gas station next to Rogers' abandoned car, police learned that he had talked with a mechanic on the day after he disappeared.
The mechanic told us that my father had brought the car in and he needed it to be repaired. And he paid for the car before he left.
What's it gonna cost?
We're looking at about $40.
$40. Okay, I pay you now, okay?
Now it's fine.
The person at the station told us that he was last seen walking away from the station, kind of staggering, swaying, that his speech was slurred. At that time was when we really felt that he may have suffered a slight stroke causing some type of memory impairment. He had a telephone credit card on him when he was missing. And that credit card was used on a number of occasions after he was last seen by the security company.
The calls made on Rogers' credit card were traced. All of them were numbers from want ads printed in a local newspaper.
I think when he became lost, he had that need to work. He had no money. He had enough faculties about him that his natural instinct to survive took over, and Rogers did make some of those calls using his telephone credit card. He was probably picked up either by a law enforcement agency or even our paramedics and transported to a hospital for medical treatment as a John Doe, and is probably still there.
I don't give up. I still pray that I find him somewhere one day. I just feel it within my heart. That he'll be all right.
Update, Topeka, Kansas. The night after our broadcast, police received a call from a man who believed he recognized Rogers Cain as a local resident named Elmer Jackson.
The caller said when he seen him on TV that he was positive it was him. And in questioning him, that's when he come up with the mannerisms, the fact that he had no dentures at that time, a scar on his body, which I don't think anybody probably knew, except maybe the Los Angeles police and the relatives.
Acting on the caller's tip, police attempted to locate Elmer Jackson, only to discover he had disappeared. Within days, Rogers Cain's son, Lynn, flew to Topeka and joined the police search.
From what I know, he's been in the area about a year and a half, and a truck driver picked him up, decided to name him Elmer, and gave him his last name, which was Jackson, so he goes by Elmer Jackson. He's been working several jobs, or side jobs here and there, laying bricks and things like that.
LYNN CAIN and the Topeka police canvassed the neighborhood where Elmer Jackson was last seen. They passed out flyers of Rogers Cain's picture, but were unable to locate him.
It's been the best lead so far, or the only lead for us right at this point. And we're unsuccessful today, but maybe tomorrow, or days to come.
For every mystery, there is someone, somewhere, who knows the truth. Perhaps that someone is watching. Perhaps it's you.